Hard to believe day 2 in the books now in the Kelsey Fitzsimmons case. Maybe even harder to believe we're pretty much halfway done. Expect a verdict from this judge by Thursday. Let's get into what happened today.
Justice, where are you? Michael and Linda are here.
Love you, Linda.
The world is justice. Will we ever find justice?
The courthouse the other day in the hallway, you're singing
Will
"Oh
we
Happy
know
Day."
justice when we see it? To be and down, may I lead the way. Hoping justice will win the day. It's Nary clues, finding justice where we can. Join us now, we're on the run. Justice is waiting, we'll see it done.
And welcome once again to Justice Serve TV. Michael Bryant here. Good to have you along from Lawrence, Massachusetts. I'm hearing more and more about Lawrence, and we heard some of it through one of the witnesses for today, and that was Mr. Noonan. Remember, he went to Lawrence from North Andover because he wanted a little more action, a little more experience. And I'm hearing this town can be dangerous after dark. I'll put it that way. I've suggested it's kind of being gentrified. They got the Merrimack River that runs through town, big warehousing along there that you can tell back in the day was, that was keeping the town hopping. Now it feels more like a steel town, but they're turning all of those big factory warehouses into housing and light industrial and office. So it's going to be, kind of the cool hip happening place to be. But the town is still, it's got some rough edges. Okay, let's put it that way. So that's why Noonan decided to go from quiet, peaceful, calm North Andover to Lawrence, where he spent 13 years on the job here. Then went back to North Andover for the final few years of his career to kind of ease into things. Of course, little did he know, easing into things would involve shooting a fellow officer. Anyway, so Judge Ashley Willcott coming up. Before we do that, though, before we get into today's activities. Okay, just a couple of things. First of all, before I forget, Linda Kenny Baden wrapping up her federal activities today, and so at some point she will join the mix tomorrow. She has to sleep in. I'm not scheduling her, so we'll get back to you on that. But she should be available at some point for part of the day tomorrow. Okay, rip and read. The first verdict is in the cases against Meta and social media about the impact on children, the addictive nature. We have talked before about the LA case, and in fact, that jury is still deliberating. They sent out a note or a communication to the court asking if, when they applied damage figures, only the people who voted in favor of liability should have any input on the damages, which was a very interesting question. As somebody who's done a number of civil cases in which you don't need unanimity, you just need 9 out of 12 in California. Never had anybody ask that. You always just assume that all 12 are going to weigh in, and that let's say the verdict is 9-3 in favor of liability. You figure the other 3 who said no are just going to say give them 0, and then everybody else just whatever number that you guys come up with, you do. I've never had a jury ask, what about those folks that didn't agree that there was liability? So that case is still churning, as I understand it, as of when I last checked. But the very first verdict in a case of this kind has just come down in New Mexico against Meta, again, based on the addictive nature of their product on children. Any guess what the number is? Should I leave you to throw some numbers out there? Well, now you guys will cheat and look it up. $375 million in damages against Meta in what is the first in the nation, the first of many that suggest that social media, as it's presented, the product itself, is addictive and harmful to children. I think there was a phrase I wrote down here somewhere. There's a very specific phrase in the verdict suggesting, that this is done willfully and it is causing damage to these kids. So the other note for the rip and read is in the Karen Reed case. Remember, funny how much the cops in this part of the world become an issue. The Proctor facta all of those nasty emails, the phones that have been bounced around and fought over for so long. They're still alive, still going to be an issue. We know some of the criminal cases that they want to use them in, including the Miles case. But there's also civil cases. And on, I think it was February 26th, the court issued an order saying that Karen Reed could use what's on those phones, very limited, very particular, in the O'Keefe case, right? And let me see if I can see. I didn't have a chance to do more than just look at this on my phone as I was scrambling around to put some stuff together. So let me just read it from my phone. And thanks to Kyle Sharkey who forwarded this along to me. In the O'Keefe case, O'Keefe versus CNC Hospitality is the official caption. Obviously, Karen Reed is in that caption as well. So she was going to be allowed to use those. It was a very specific restriction on how the data could be stored, shared, utilized, etc. Well, now, and it was just put on calendar, there's been a new request for, let me see if I can get the caption here. This is Karen Reed's motion for permission to use materials recovered from former State Trooper Michael Proctor's phone in related Superior Court proceedings subject to all other terms of the court's existing order. Okay, so it makes you think, well, that sounds kind of redundant because didn't she get that? Oh, no, that's not exactly what she's looking for. Reed requests that the court make an amendment to the February 26th order and permit her to also use each communication in connection with a separate civil trial Reed will bring, as in the future, against the Massachusetts State Police and the town of Canton in Bristol Superior Court. Bring in another court. I haven't been to Bristol. When the presentment period ends, as you probably recall, anytime you try to go after a public entity, there is an administrative process you have to exhaust before you can file a civil action. Quite often, these government entities, because they don't care, they're not going to give you a dime anyway. They either waive the period or they just let it roll, or they'll send you a note saying denied. But you have to have that before you can file suit. So they're saying that period will end May 21. These communications are highly relevant to the negligent hiring, training, and supervising claims that Reed intends to assert, among others, against the Massachusetts State Police and Canton. So, very interesting. Hey, don't cut me off with my case against Massachusetts State Police. I'm first in line there. Let's get that done before you start piling on there, and then their discovery requests get backed up. I still haven't gotten the body cam I have requested, which they have acknowledged in discovery exists, of the incident or incidents involving that guy, the known agitator, Michael Bryant. Okay, so there we go. Now, let's come back here. Let's come back to the Kelsey Fitzsimmons case. I'm very excited to have joining me once again, Judge Ashley Willcott is here. Judge, how are you?
I'm good. Michael, thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure to be on with you, and especially because you've been in the courtroom.
It's so interesting, as you know, when you go beyond the wall of this weird TV thing and, you're mixing with the folks and you're getting real reactions and the input it's palpably different. And so I'm always glad when I can get out and do that. So before we get into some of the details of today's testimony, let me get your thoughts on the case as you've seen it unfold over these 2 days.
Well, I have to say this, Michael. I initially thought, why in the world is she doing a bench trial? Why not do a jury trial to try to get the sympathies of the jury and understand what she was doing from her perspective? But by the end of today, I changed my mind and I thought, I think they're doing a bench trial because of the nuances in the testimony of the officer who shot her and of what he says happened and how it happened. Because if you listen carefully, there are just some facts that have changed since the initial statement. And I thought maybe this is sophisticated enough that they want a judge who can really decide the credibility, decide the evidence, and parse out the law in a way differently than a jury would.
Yeah, what's your take on this? Boils down to a he said, she said. I mean, that's really what we've got here. Now you're trying to convince one person of your side, whether you're on the he said side or the she said side. You don't have what could be 12 different perspectives. So what do you think of that in the context of a jury trial versus a bench trial?
Well, I think, the difference is the jury, again, doesn't have, and juries are smart, and I love juries, but they don't have the sophistication of the law and how to apply it and maybe how to interpret some of the testimony in the same way that a judge does. But think about it, at least with a jury of 12, you can have a better statistical chance of convincing at least one, right? So I think statistically, a jury gives you more opportunity to convince at least one person this happened my way as the defendant. So you can at least have a hung jury, if not an acquittal. A judge, it's one person. I think that's a harder, but one person, Michael, that's a scary thing.
It's an all or nothing proposition. Obviously the judge is not going to come back and say, I'm hung.
Right.
I don't know what to do. I'm hung up on this.
You know what we do. You know what judges do when that happens, Michael? I'll take this under advisement and I'll issue a ruling when it's time, because sometimes we do have to sit on it and do the research and do the thinking. But you're right. That judge is going to make this final decision.
Yeah. And I have to believe, maybe it's wishful thinking, that this is not going to be a long, quote, deliberation. I think he is effectively deliberating as new information comes in, and he's sorting and sifting, and he's, it's like the decision a court might make after a briefing, and now they just need to put the final sentence or two together, right? And solidify what they've been thinking based on the paperwork. Well, I think, is starting to put that together based on all the evidence presented, and then he'll finalize that. And, I don't know what that takes. You tell me. You're the judge. Is that a 2-hour process? Is that how long do you think it will take based on the nature of this case?
Well, you know what I used to do is I used to take the statute or statutes that the person was charged with and have those. And then I would take notes from all the testimony of what I believed factually supported each element. And then if I got to another witness and said, wait a minute, credibility wise, for reasons ABC, I'm not going to believe this version. I believe that version. That gets rid of proof of that element. So at the end of the day, for me, it would be fairly straightforward, because I would have this way to look at it and say, yes, there's a conviction, or no conviction, acquittal. But I think in this case, the other thing that demonstrates to me that this judge is a long way down the road by the time it finishes and knowing what he wants to do. He's very actively involved. You've been there in person, but just watching it, the things that he asks and says, and he even gives instructions to the attorneys. For instance, on cross-examination today, one of the attorneys, the defense attorney, was not yet getting out a document to impeach. And the judge said, listen, when both sides start talking about prior testimony, you need to get out that document. And so by being so actively involved in the course of this bench trial, I think he will be a long way, like you said, towards a decision by the time he gets to the end of it.
Yeah, and he's definitely been a hot bench in a very kind of casual way, don't you think? And self-effacing. Oh, here I go talking out of both sides of my mouth again.
Yes.
So he's telling us what's the struggle that's going on in his own head. But that's refreshing. It's kind of interesting. Okay, so now let's take a look under the robe, as it were. Let's say okay, for whatever reason, what your decision is going to be. You can't just, 5-minute break and then come back. You can't do it. So what is a reasonable time to reflect and deliberate so that people aren't really, accusing you of just rushing to judgment somehow?
Great question. I think a couple of hours at least. If you finish first thing in the morning, then you do it after lunch. If you finish right after lunch at the end of the day, maybe you do it the next day. But I think every judge has to take time to absorb, to think through. I personally have to do it overnight. I am one of those people. I feel like by sleeping on it, coming back, looking at it again, I will make the most just decision based on the evidence. So I even think overnight is acceptable, but at least a couple of hours, right? To look through all your notes and make certain, and talk to your law clerk, talk to your research assistants, and make sure you are doing it right.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. I think minimum 2 hours. I do not want to see us sleep on it, just for my own personal reasons. And for Kelsey's, she's kind of been twisted in the wind for plenty of time. She'd like this resolved sooner or later, no matter how it is, so she can move forward on that next step in this journey. Speaking of that, I was talking to Julie Hess, who is her family law attorney, and Brian. I'm sorry, Brian, I can't remember your last name. But he's a giant dude. People have seen him in court together. He's a giant. And she's been very open and helpful in getting me information about how these cases are coexisting. And really what the most important thing is not that the criminal matter is unimportant, but going forward, let's get her back with the kid, right? And she answered a couple of questions yesterday. I've sent a couple more, wondering about Justin the alien's testimony, how that may have affected her role, and also what she would expect to see in what I called a perfect scenario in terms of visitation and custody. And she mentioned that it does hinge to some degree on what happens in this case, obviously, because if mom is a convicted felon, doesn't mean you're cut out, but certainly the family court is going to weigh that. How would you address that? And how deeply do you dive into the underlying issues within the conviction?
Both. I do both. First of all, I do look deeply at that because the basis of the conviction affects whether or not you might be a risk to your own child, right? And so if the basis of the conviction is that she drew this weapon, aggravated assault in a scenario that was domestic in nature, you have to think about that child. And does she put that child at risk? Number one. Number two, I think the sentence makes a big difference too. So if she's a convicted felon, but she is not sentenced to serve time, or it's time served and she's out, that's a very different picture for a child than if she's behind bars in terms of visitation, contact, supervision, therapy, all those things. So I think those are both important questions.
Yeah. And I think I've probably skipped over that in my mind because the nature of this crime, the likelihood of any jail time, if convicted, first time offense, et cetera, and time served of over 100 days, in my mind, it's like she's not going to be behind bars, but she may have a conviction. That would be an issue. We should be clear that even if you're convicted of a murder and you're in prison for that, most courts are not going to strip you of visitation. Take the kid for a jail visit, or a prison visit, right?
Right. And I have to, you and I talked about this with Linda in the last show, but I just have to reiterate, there's a very different thing between a murder conviction of a parent or any criminal conviction of a parent and termination of parental rights. Those are two very different systems, very different legal actions. And termination of parental rights is what happens when there are proper grounds to strip your rights and say, Michael, these are not your children anymore. You have no right to them and you have no obligations. You don't have to pay child support. You don't have to support them in any way. That is not what happens when there's a conviction at all. The person with a conviction still has their parental rights. They have due process. They have constitutional rights. You don't get to interfere with their right to parent. You do get to put safeguards in place, but those are two very different things.
Yeah. In my mind, I'm thinking that's got to be like a Ted Bundy scenario or something. It's
Right.
got to be very
Egregious.
very extreme. And so to Dizzy's question, would a conviction affect her chances of custody and visitation? I would say, and I think you would agree, no, but the degree of custody and visitation certainly, and whether supervised or unsupervised would be affected, right?
Absolutely. I agree. And think about this. The thing I would use if I were the family law attorney in court is that she tried to give the officer her baby. So she tried to remove her child. And anyone in that state of mind, regardless if you believe him or her in terms of his testimony or her, the defendant's testimony, for her to take that action to protect her child and get her child removed, that's a positive protective factor, which weighs in her favor.
Gotcha. Yeah. And I was, one of the questions I asked Julie, I haven't checked my mail, but I don't think I've gotten a response, was, we've seen these videos now of Justin the alien smoking something outside the home. Would that in and of itself affect his visitation and custody? And if not in and of itself, what do you need? What more?
Not
would you
outside
need?
the home. So a lot of parents smoke whatever they're smoking. And if it's outside the home, outside the presence of the child, that's one thing. Step two, you have to look at is what they're smoking illegal? Is it something that's a different level of illegal in terms of drugs than a marijuana? So if they're smoking crack, that's a different level drug. That's a different consequence than if they're smoking marijuana. So you have to look at those things, because someone in many states, every state has different laws, someone who is smoking crack, even if outside the presence of the child, there's some good arguments, is not then able to parent the child because they're under the influence of crack, versus marijuana, where you also have to show harm as a result of their marijuana, which can be a different standard because many can function and care for a child properly. And I'm not making judgment, and I'm not suggesting any of this reflects on a person. I'm saying this is what the law provides for when it comes to that custody decision.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that makes sense. The severity of whatever that drug would be. This should answer Darcy's question then, Judge Ashley. What about his obsession? Darcy 14S has already determined that he has an obsession with drugs. But yeah, so I think that discussion handles that. And it's interesting that Julie Hess in the affidavit that accompanies the hearing they have coming up, not on April 2nd, I will tell folks, that's been changed.
Oh,
April 14th is the protective order with which Bradel will be arguing to get that erased from the whole process. Obviously, the criminal case bears heavily on that, but they thought they would move the April 2nd, which is a more traditional custody visitation issue, till after that protective order is determined. So from what I'm hearing from Julie, it's going to be as close to the 14th as possible, not to drag this out any longer, but it just made sense that she envisioned that even going on April 2nd might result in continuing it anyway until after the protective order was heard, even if it's probably the same judge, Judge Mary Black, but she would not be jumping the gun to look at one versus the other. You would know that, right? I mean, it's a court calendar for a reason, and you know, they're going to do the best to follow that court calendar.
exactly.
This is a good question. Is an attempted suicide another issue that could affect her custody of her child? Obviously, that's the defense in this case.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It doesn't, again, mean she shouldn't have custody. It means what prompted her to feel it necessary to take that action, and what is she receiving to ensure she doesn't go down that slippery slope again? Is she getting counseling? Is she seeing a therapist? And all of this, in my mind, is going to be therapy driven, right? There are a lot of needs when there's trauma like this, regardless of the why, regardless of how it happened, there's trauma as a result of this. And so you've got to deal with that. And if someone has attempted to kill themselves, they need to get the services in place so that they have a better mental space and mental health to not put themselves at risk, as well as a parent, mother of the child.
Yeah. Yeah. It's such a huge, there's no, it seems like everything's a gray area. Everything. There's really no black and white and that's so important because why? Best interest of the child.
And
right?
that can change in a week. I mean, that's the scary thing too, for any parent with a child, right? You can have an undiagnosed mental health issue, and then you get on medication and get treatment that's proper, and all of a sudden you're a very different person and you're able to do it all. But if you go off your meds, you could suddenly become a person that's unable or unequipped to parent a child. So all of these things are also ever changing, right? You just have to monitor it for a while to make sure everything's going okay.
Yeah, till the child's 18, and then you know they're on their own, right? They're out of the nest at that point.
Yeah.
Let's see. Let's the tall glass. If the judge denies defense mistrial, and again, or directed verdict, I think it might be what they're suggesting here. The Commonwealth didn't officially rest today, but practically speaking, they did. There was this issue over the judge view, which is going to happen Thursday morning, but I would expect first thing in the morning, just to get it on record, Commonwealth will rest. Defense will put on their case. But if at the end of that, if there is this will be interesting because, Judge, we usually hear, okay, Commonwealth or the state rests. Jury members, we have a matter of law in motion. We're going to excuse you. So then the directed verdict or whatever you want to call it in a given jurisdiction takes place, where the defense says, Your Honor, even if everything is construed in the light most favorable to the prosecution, they haven't proven bupkis. Let's get out of here. And then the judge says denied. And then they bring the jury back in and the prosecution sits and the defense does their thing. Well, now the judge is the judge. So I guess they'll just make the motion to him. He'll then deny it. And then the defense will launch into their case. So if that is what I'm interpreting this judge denies defense mistrial, I'm assuming that is a directed verdict reference. And after the state case, do you think they'll still acquit? I don't know that that one leads to another. I think they're totally separate analysis.
Completely agree with you, because in the first case, when you have a directed verdict, again, depending on the jurisdiction as to what that's called, you're asking the court to find there's no evidence. They didn't have the evidence to support the charge in the first place. So it has to be dismissed as a matter of law. Well, in this particular case, as an example, there is evidence to suggest that it happened. What specifically, in my mind, you have the testimony of the ex-fiance as well as Patrick Noonan. So I don't think a judge would be able to find legally that it can be kicked out. But it doesn't mean that that's an automatic conviction, because then that next step, to your point, Michael, exactly what you said, the analysis by the court's very different. Now he has to say, okay, I heard this evidence, but which of the evidence is reliable and credible for me to say it's beyond a reasonable doubt proof that she committed this crime?
Yeah. And so that would be bizarre if it were denied motion for directed verdict or what. And by the way, guilty. That would be a weird twist of fate. Okay, so let's do this. Speaking of the burden of proof and the witnesses that have been on the stand up to this point, I'm going to do some. I always complain that when I'm on the road and I have only one screen to play with, it gets a little trickier. But I'm going to do my best here. I actually had a couple of minutes to pull up some specific moments. Normally, Judge, we play a little something I called True Crime Roulette, and that's where I'll pull the video from the day. And we'll just kind of scroll through until somebody says stop. And then we just listen for a few minutes and react to it. Today, we've got some specific stuff. And I'm going to start with, stand by, Mr. The shooter, Noonan.
Patrick Noonan.
So he took the stand today. One quick follow-up on a direct issue that was really nothing, but it was mostly cross-examination. And one of the questions that became very interesting to me, and this was a like a To Kill a Mockingbird moment, or one of those Perry Mason moments where people in the courtroom were like, I mean, and to the point the bailiffs were like, shh, quiet, and scowling, right? Wow. I'm going to let it play out. Let me see if I can find it here for us. I'm going to let it play out, and then we can rehash and talk about it here.
And you went in there thinking that Kelsey was dangerous and had guns, and you might get into it, right?
That's inaccurate.
And that's why you had your gloves on, isn't it?
No.
You were ready to get wet.
No.
I'm sorry, ready to get what? Get wet.
And on that point, the get wet part, the judge is very quick to say, I don't know what the hell that means. Could you, and the get wet, that's kind of a trade craft, meaning it's going to be violent work. Murder even is called wet work in the, in the black ops world. So that's what Bradel was suggesting, because this guy's, ex-military, and a lot of these cops are. And so he threw that in there, but the judge is like, what? What? So
I've never heard that expression. You just taught me something new. I would not have known what that was either.
That's my my secret profession is I'm basically a hitman. So we do a lot of wet work.
You get wet.
Get wet.
And that's when you had to adjust the narrative, isn't that true?
No.
So you're going to maintain that you got into a gunfight with somebody who was your colleague, right?
Yes.
Who had just given you her baby to feed 5 minutes earlier.
Yes.
Of her own volition.
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to drag this out for just a moment more because I have to respond to, and you can respond to this comment. Thank you, Amanda. Michael, please tell Judge Ashley she has the best hair.
Why, thank you. Wow, I love this show.
Thank you for JSTV and your coverage. Okay, so okay. Let me move that on here. I can't find. Somebody help me. Can somebody remove that for me so we can focus just a second? I was distracted by the hair comment, so I want to. Where in the heck did that go? I apologize, folks. Let me see if I can get rid of it. Okay, there I got it. Okay, let's go back because I'm teeing up this big statement he made. Okay.
She developed some sort of a homicidal animus towards you for what Justin Elaine just did to her, right?
I don't think it was unbeknownst to me. I didn't know Justin was in the house. I think I was standing in her way for her to get downstairs and kill Justin.
What? Look at even the cameraman's like, whoa, I gotta, because he's hearing what's the rumbling that's going on in the courtroom. It was audible and it was odd. Even Kelsey's physical reaction. You can see Courtney, Tim Bradel's paralegal there in the foreground. Everybody was was taken aback, whatever that really means, taken aback. What do you think? And Linda and I had a conversation not too long ago about, the possibilities of that moment when this interaction was taking place. Is he, overreacting and just, shooting from the hip, or does she have some motivation beyond killing herself, which is the defense? She was trying to, she was threatening to kill herself. I said maybe she's so upset at Justin that Noonan's just in the way, and that's basically what he's testified to. His take was that I needed to be taken out so she could go down and get Justin. It was unclear whether that was his perception in the moment or after a long time thinking it over, to come up with something that sounded great to support his narrative, which of course the defense has been very active in trying to reveal to the judge. This is all just made up, Judge. This is all just cops circling the wagon. What's your take on that revelation that, hey, I was just in the way. She wanted to knock me out to go kill him?
Maybe he was listening to your show and heard you say
Yeah,
that, Michael.
yeah, that was probably it.
Because the one thing I'm going to say, though, is he said in hindsight, he assumed that's what she was going to do. Well, the problem I have is, number one, the reaction of the defendant of Kelsey Fitzsimmons, as well as her attorneys, and as you described, the courtroom. This must have been the first time anybody's heard this. And remember, you don't just go to trial. You know this better than anyone. You don't just walk in a courtroom and try a case. You have gone through months and months and months and years of stuff, of interviews, of depositions, of reading every document, of reading every statement, of having it ready to impeach. And this is the first time this is seemingly coming up. That to me makes it feel a little bit like, whoa, 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 where did this come from?
Yeah, it was, I'm definitely going to be asking Tim about that at some point. And that is, had you ever heard that before? Did that come as a surprise to you? Because he seemed to be kind of stunned and had nowhere to go at that point. It was a very important moment that, I don't know, if it were a jury, it would have landed very differently. No idea what the judge might think of something. So I don't know. That's evil. Just to think that she had that in mind, a double homicide, just to get rid of Justin.
But Michael, wouldn't you have objected on grounds of speculation? Because he has no idea what she was thinking. And so I also struggle with, like, why didn't somebody jump up and down and scream and yell, maybe not literally, but figuratively, to the judge about, you can't ask that. That's speculation. You need to strike that, and you can't even consider it. I don't know.
I'll have to ask Tim over an adult beverage someday. Said, were you so surprised? And you're constantly as a trial attorney in this living, breathing thing called the trial, you're reevaluating what each thing means. Did you have the awareness at the time to think, that's not a bad thing for people to even the judge to incorporate into their analysis of this case? Because it seems like a lot, like overthought out, like somebody's writing a novel. It just doesn't seem like something that would be genuinely concerning to the guy who's now sitting on the stand, unless you're afraid of being, the cop shooter,
So a step too far. Yeah.
Did you notice that he said almost automatically, it was almost like Pavlovian, when there was a comment about they wanted to section her. Section 8's a housing thing. Section her, meaning mental evaluation. He would, anytime they're challenging what he did that day, because she wanted to kill me, because she tried to kill me, because she tried to kill me. He said that probably a half a dozen times in that same cadence, just triggered almost immediately by something that was threatening his story. Did you find that genuine, the way he was just regurgitating that?
No, but I got to tell you, I struggled with the credibility of his testimony. I don't feel like he got up there and purposely lied. I don't mean that. I mean, it's coming from the perspective of he shot a fellow officer. And so I think it's a hard perspective for someone to say, I shouldn't have shot her. She was trying to hurt herself. She wasn't trying to hurt me. Instead, he may think, wow, I've got to preserve myself and my job. And I just shot a fellow cop. I got to think about why I shot this fellow cop. Well, from my perspective, she was trying to kill me. So I think he's being sincere, but I also think he's all over the map with too many of the little details for me to believe that's really what happened. I feel more like what you said. It's after the fact and he's thinking through it. And what else makes it sound better? Well, it makes it sound better if I say this, if I go this far. And so I struggle with believing everything he said.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I took a step back and I just felt like his overall presence was just like, I'm the cop. I'm the tough guy. I'm putting on my tactical gloves in every scenario, whether it's wet work or not, very defensive about it. I can't imagine what the guy's going through. However it evolved, he shot a fellow cop that almost died. I mean, is really he should be thanking his lucky stars that he's sitting there testifying and she's there alive to see it happen.
Yeah.
It's easy for me to say that, but that's the reality. Let's see this question here. Any idea about the package? Parking far away. Are they all paranoid? Let me get your take on that. I do find that to be an interesting issue, but I'm not sure why. So everybody knew, for everybody that was not really that friendly with her, everybody knew where she lived. I mean, I know it's not a big town, but everybody seemed to know where she lived and would drive by and knew where she parked. But why wasn't she parked in the driveway that day? Why was it 100 or so yards further down the road near a park, I think is where it was. Do you make anything of that?
I do. Maybe I shouldn't, right? I'm a little scared to say because it really, again, sounds judgmental. But to me, it's like, wait a minute. She's trained as an officer to know how to be cautious or do surveillance. And to me, parking somewhere like that, if it's unusual, is because there's another motive. There's another step. Maybe she wanted to sneak attack, so to speak, and see what was going on or see who was there and not let the person in the house know she was there. It does feel to me suspect.
Yeah, and in the big context of, okay, she was in the at the Commons, which is some sort of park, I guess, or shopping center. She's there for 3 hours waiting for Justin, not knowing that this whole thing is evolving. But that doesn't square with, if she's totally oblivious to all of that. I don't know how the car being parked elsewhere when she returns home is a factor. I just don't get it. I really don't get it. Nobody's explained it to me. And I just don't know if it's nefarious. Weird. Yeah, it sounds weird. Definitely sounds weird. Maybe when she testifies tomorrow, we can get to that, and it'll be something very. I know, obviously, people want to know. Does the judge know or care? I don't know.
I would want to know if I were the judge. I would want to know.
I don't know that it would be determinative, but I would definitely want to know.
Right. I agree.
Here's another question for you. Why didn't Justice tell anyone that Kelsey kept her weapons upstairs? Or why didn't these 3 officers ask Justin where she kept her weapons? And why didn't Bradel ever ask these 4 men about that? Well, let's think this through. My bigger concern is, and I've said this from before the case began, and it was reinforced yesterday, it concerns me that she lied about the guns being in the basement. And Tim Bradel tried to talk about it in the context of, I think in his opening statement, even he mentioned it. So no, it's coming up with Kelsey tomorrow for sure. It was because she didn't want it to be an issue that, hey, there's a gun upstairs that at that time was unsecured. Remember, her testimony, we believe, is going to be that the day before Justin was there to get his guns. So he's rifling through the safes. He has 9 guns. He's collecting his guns. Hey, maybe he has 10. That's a lot of guns. And he doesn't really admit to taking her guns out, putting them on the bed, which is what Tim Bradel suggested. So maybe there's a gun or 2 that is unsecured because of Justin, the alien, doing what he did the day before. She never got around to putting them where they needed to be. So she didn't want that to become an issue. She knew she wasn't going to do anything with them. They weren't laying out at the time. It's not like they were laying out on the bed. So she lies. I think that's a hard lie to get past. Thoughts?
I think it's a bad fact. I think you have to own the bad fact. She shouldn't have lied about it. You might as well put that out in front of the judge. But also, why didn't they clear the house? I mean, even if she lied and they didn't know where the guns were, I thought, and someone there or someone who is watching and listening can share if they know, I thought law enforcement was trained to clear a house or person properly. And I fear that there was some deference given because she was a colleague and they just failed a step that could have prevented all of this.
Yeah, and that's concerned me too, because it seems that favoritism, if that's what you want to call it, cuts both ways. We know how it's applied to Justin the alien, but I do get the sense that they were trying to accommodate up to the point where she flipped when she learned Justin was going to be there, and then in fact heard his voice downstairs. That was the triggering mechanism. And so I was a little annoyed that when they knock on the door, they go in, and Lieutenant Daly has the paperwork. They don't really tell her until they're in the house, kind of in the midst of conversation. Oh, hey, by the way, we have this restraining order. You're going to have to give up the baby. It's only going to be for 2 weeks. Don't worry. You'll have your day in court. I don't know if that's the norm, because cops would never get allowed into somebody's home if they told them on the doorstep, here's what we're here for. What's your take on that? Do you think it was an accommodation for her to, or was it hiding it from her?
I think it was more of an accommodation. I think that I don't think police ever want to tell a new mother, there's an order. We got to take your baby. Even if it's just for 2 weeks, you'll get to go to court. Who wants to deliver that news?
Yeah, hopefully nobody. Yeah.
Nobody. And so then you're having to deliver it to a colleague and someone you know. I would think that makes it worse. And I think you're going to just kind of try to soften it and do it in a way that you think would be more gracious, so to speak, to someone that's familiar with you. And I don't know, that my sense is that's what happened here, but I don't know.
Okay, so let's look at one more little bit here from our star, Noonan, and this was very interesting, and this was the crescendo for Bradle's cross-examination, and it had to do with that very important time right after Kelsey is shot. She's on the ground. In the room is Noonan. Others had, from what I can tell, had not quite gathered yet, and so he makes a statement. All right, and I will leave it there and let that play out. Stand by here, and you can hear what Tim Bradle tells this judge, what he added to the mix, and you can decide whether it's genuine or not.
Assist Lieutenant Daly with first aid.
Yes.
Okay. And you were asked by the ADA, what did she say when she was on the floor? Recall that?
I don't remember that.
Yes or no, just the context of being asked that.
Maybe.
Okay. And see if this refreshes your memory. You said that she said, it hurts. She said, it hurts. I, meaning you, said, keep breathing. You have a baby to live for.
Yes.
Right? And that was your testimony about what she said and what you said, right?
Yes.
And that was the truth?
Yes.
And that was the whole truth?
Yes.
Now, when you were interviewed by Attorney Bennett of the CIC investigation.
Okay, let me just preface this by the CIC investigation was an independent investigation in which supposedly outside personnel were brought in to do interviews. There was an 80-page report presented. The defense never got the actual statements in their entirety. They were quoted within this 80-page report, but they never got, if those are excerpts, where's the whole thing? Whether recorded, transcribed, whatever. They never got them. Everybody was saying, I don't know, I don't have that stuff. They finally got the stuff. So from that stuff, they were able to look at Noonan's statement about what he said he told Kelsey when she was on the ground and had said that it hurts.
Yes.
You painted quite a different picture, didn't you?
No.
You had something to add that made you look good, didn't you?
No.
You said to Attorney Bennett, if I could have one moment, Judge, I just want to get this exactly right.
Oh, building the drama.
And Michael, while we're waiting, somebody asked, can you turn on a volume booster because the video is hard to hear?
Is it bad? Yeah, and I don't have that handy.
I can hear it, though. I can hear it.
Okay. When they're off mic, it's brutal, but
yeah,
when they're
always,
yeah, but it's pretty well mic'd. NBC 10 did a decent job of setting this up, considering. So now he's looking through this transcript. I don't know why it wasn't marked more clearly so he could get right to the punch, but it is kind of worth the wait. That's Attorney Moriarty there. If your name's Moriarty, don't you have to become an attorney or something? Yeah. Come on, Tim. Come on. You're killing us. Let's see if I can help. Hold on here.
And this is one of my biggest pet peeves. All attorneys getting into court. I don't know how to do technology. You are a miracle. You know how to do all of this. But if I'm going to be a trial attorney, I'm sure as heck going to either learn or have a good assistant to help me, because this is brutal.
Yeah. And it was funny. Yesterday, Kelsey was actually helping Courtney, the paralegal, queue up something they needed for a given witness during cross-examination. Kelsey said, like, elbowed Courtney out of the way, and she started doing the fix. These damn kids. Okay, so let's see. I've pushed ahead. I think we're to the right spot. I don't like too much electronics in terms of refreshing recollection and stuff either. I like a piece of paper. Okay, here we go.
CIC report, you did say the part that she was saying it hurt. I told her to just keep breathing. Do you recall that?
Sure.
You have a son, you know you want to be here for your kid. Does that ring a bell? I didn't hear that. I'm sorry. You have a son, you know you want to be here for your kid.
Okay.
You said that to Mr. Bennett?
If it's there, yes.
Then you added something quite memorable that you didn't say here in court. Isn't that correct?
You tell me what's in it. I don't know.
You said that she reached up, she grabbed my hand, I held her hand, consoled her, and then I asked her, why? And she stopped talking and just literally just looked right through me, death stare. That's what you said.
Yes, if it's there, that's what I said.
And you didn't say that here in court today, did you?
I didn't remember. I totally forgot about that.
You forgot about something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing further on.
There you go. What do you think of that, Judge?
Dun, dun, dun. You would think a significant fact like that would be remembered. The other thing is, I'm surprised, even with the bench trial, there maybe wasn't better preparation of this witness by the prosecution, because some of these things I felt like might have been lack of preparation. Again, not blaming. I'm just saying it felt a little bit like he's gone rogue.
Here's what I think may have happened. It may have been a practical issue, because remember, this report was available, but not the transcripts. And the DA's office, the Commonwealth, said, we don't even have it. And they apparently did not even have it. They were not, maybe purposeful or otherwise, if it's not provided to the DA, then the DA doesn't have to cough it up. It's plausible deniability. They didn't go out of their way to find it. So when Bradel gets it in hand, it may have been as recent as yesterday. And therefore, that's catching everybody off guard if you're in the Commonwealth, because they never saw it and now they're hearing it. How do you come back from that obvious? I mean, to me, that is like it was a dark and stormy night. I mean, it just sounds like a cheap pulp novel, the
death stare.
Yeah, the death
you
stare.
Just read the death stare, yeah.
What was it he said again? I took her hand in mine, and then I said, "Why?" I mean, just it is so.
And I hate in the moment, like, never mind the context that's being forgotten. I think when we hear this, it's just look at what's going on. You've got law enforcement, you've got multiple guns, you've got a baby that needs to eat, you've got all these things at once. It's chaotic at best.
Yeah, I didn't buy it. I'm not going to buy that novel. I'm not buying it. I think it hurt his credibility, because if you can catch him in what looks like a manufactured part of the narrative on one thing, how much of this is he making up to make himself look better?
Yeah. Can I ask, Michael? And I just have to. You and I both know when you see the person, it's very different than when you watch it on a TV. Watching him, what was your experience telling you in terms of credibility?
I think he was just saying what he felt he had to say to save his ass. I
Yeah.
mean, that's in the kind of overall cloak of macho man, like he just comes across that way. Boom, boom, boom. I'm going to wear my gloves even if I'm just going to the bathroom. I mean, I'm just a tough dude. I'm always looking for trouble, wherever it can be. Somebody pointed out, it might have been Aiden. Aiden Carney was there. He writes left-handed, but he shoots right-handed. He writes left-handed, shoots. I said, this guy probably, if he'd had two holsters, bam, 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 he'd be shooting with both hands. So I don't put a lot of the ambidextrous in it. But yeah, my take was hard-ass, military background, hard charging, no matter what's going on, I'm ready for it. And I just felt like to admit that he did something maybe rash doesn't fit that persona, doesn't make him the man that he wants to be.
And I suspect the judge, if you're sensing that, I bet the judge is too.
Yeah, I don't think I'm reading anything into it. I've talked to a number of folks. What's your take on this guy? Of course, I try and temper that because a lot of folks there are obviously Kelsey Fitzsimmons fans.
Right.
Kelsey Parking, put your girl brain on. Is this for me? Oh. She told Justin she was leaving. She just saw him hanging out at his friend's house. We assume he doesn't get to know where she is, so she hit her car. Ah, okay. That's as plausible as anything. If she were to tell me that, I would buy that. I would buy
agree.
that. So
I
thank
agree.
you, Lisa. Can't stand you. My wife's name is Lisa. What is going on here? Okay. All right. Very good. I appreciate that. Let's see. Before I move on, let me see if there's anything else in here I haven't gotten to. Shouldn't they have already retrieved all the guns before they let her upstairs to pack a bag? Again, this may be the accommodation they were providing her as a cop. She said more than once they're locked in the basement. And at that point, did they have any reason to not believe her?
But on the other hand, I think they still should have. I think that's a problem.
Yeah, and again, I think it's a cop, and it's this weird dichotomy of giving her a break on one hand and sticking it to her on the other.
Right, right.
It's just weird. I find that very odd. Okay, here, speaking of odd, there was something that happened yesterday where Justin the alien was saying he's in the basement when the shots went off. We saw the video that shows him clearly reacting and then running like a scared little girl to get away. But he's in the basement, and we have Noonan upstairs saying, Kelsey, don't do it, or something to that effect. Kelsey, don't do it. How does he hear that in the basement? That's my first thought. So then I think of that in the context of today's testimony from Houston. And I think Houston, what's his first name? I forgot.
I don't remember.
I don't remember. I wrote it down somewhere. Somebody can help me. Kenneth Houston. He was very helpful, I thought, for the prosecution. I thought the things he had to say, remember, he's the one to testify that she said, I'm sorry. But of course, depending on whose side you're on, is she sorry because this evolved as it did, or is she sorry because she raised her gun to a fellow officer? I mean, who knows? But it's not a good thing. It's definitely not a good thing for her. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think it's another bad fact. And I think that's what's hard about this case is no matter how favorably you look at all of the facts supporting Kelsey, if you believe she was trying to take her own life, this is a horrible, tragic circumstance, but she's not guilty of this charge. There are a few facts that don't help her case and sound bad. That's one of them. Lying about the guns being in the basement is another of them. And I think she has to fall on the sword with some of these things.
Yeah. And talk about, I guess, the stress of the moment, when it all starts to sink in. I do think that the guns in the basement, it came up a number of times before she really even maybe knew what was about to happen. And now I have Mr. Houston at a point, and this relates back to my thinking that Justin the alien could never have heard what he says he heard. And this is, let me see if I can cue this up to the right spot here. Stand by. He was on the stand, for a decent chunk. But what did you think of him in general? Any thoughts of his testimony or his demeanor or his role?
Which one, Justin?
No.
Or Kenneth?
Yeah, Kenneth Houston.
I just felt like he was kind of nonplussed and unemotional and not too invested in any of this.
What I
Just
thought
kinda
was
like takeaway.
interesting, I thought he was a better friend or came across as one than Noonan. Going into this, everybody, oh, Noonan and Kelsey were friendly because of this horrible shared experience. But Houston's like, yeah, we tried to keep in touch when she was off for her pregnancy issues, and they were going to set up some gatherings with people. I mean, clearly he had some relationship with her outside of work, and that's what I would have anticipated with Noonan. Definitely wasn't with Noonan. But this guy, it seemed like, I guess maybe he did have something going on, which makes him, I think, more believable. And whatever he says, like, I'm sorry, more damaging. I think it carries more weight.
And he wasn't overly emotional, right? Like, I
No.
felt like Noonan was in a bad way overly emotional, trying to sell it too hard. And Kenneth Houston, I didn't think was.
Yeah, no, I think he was credible, which again reinforces what I think is maybe not so good for Kelsey. Okay, so here he is on the stand, and again, relating back to what I said about what Justin the alien could or couldn't hear from the basement.
Right when I was moving up the stairs, or once everything got situated, it was in that time frame, but I can't remember if it was exactly when I got to the top of the stairs or.
Okay, would looking at a report help you remember that?
I went too far. Sorry, I've gone too far. Let me go back to the spot where he says what he heard. And remember, he's now
Did something
one
happen?
floor below. He's not in the basement. He's not 2 floors below. He's 1 floor below. Come on, work with me, Slider.
So
Could you?
walked past Lieutenant.
Okay, here we
I told
go.
him. So when I went downstairs, I only saw Lieutenant Daly, the mom, and I told him, Kelsey doesn't want Justin in the house. And he said, all right, Justin's, I don't know if he said he's in the basement or he's coming up from the basement. He said, just go to the basement and tell him just to wait outside.
Okay. So where'd you go?
I walked past Lieutenant Daly and Kelsey's mom through the kitchen where the basement, the top of the stairs is, and I opened that door.
Could you see down?
So the lights were off. I flicked the light to turn the lights on. Lights didn't turn on. So
Could you hear anything downstairs?
I couldn't hear anything. And I remember after I flicked the lights on, they didn't go on. And I'm looking at a pitch black basement. I thought there was a chance I misheard Lieutenant Daly. And I just kind of stood there. I was like, I really don't want to walk down there if he's not down there, but I don't know how I was just kind of having like a moment where I wasn't sure whether or not to check with Lieutenant Daly.
Okay. Did something happen at that point?
Yeah. So at that point, I heard Officer Noonan yell, Kelsey, and then I heard 2 gunshots.
What did you do?
I ran back the way I came. At that point, it was only Kelsey's mom. She was still in the living room. Lieutenant Daly was gone. He'd already gone upstairs, and I started making my way upstairs.
When you
Okay, so he only hears, to get back to my original point here, he only hears the word Kelsey. That's all. And again, arguably, he's in a better position to hear whatever is said. He's a floor up from where Justin the alien is. What do you think of that?
I think this is the entire reason, maybe not entire reason, but a lot of the reason that the defense wanted the judge to go see where it happened and hear and know, is that possible? Is that practical? How are you going to know? You're going to walk in a house and see what you can hear when you're upstairs and downstairs.
That leads me to a really good question. First of all, the view is going to happen Thursday morning. Interesting the way it played out because it was a motion made by Bradel. The court went as far as he possibly could not to rule on it. It's like, well,
That's what he said. He was talking out of both sides of his mouth, Michael.
And Bradel says, well, we made the motion, but, like, somebody please make a freaking decision. And so the judge said, we're going to do it. One of the wild cards that was cleared up today was that it's owned by somebody else. You can't just knock on the door and say, hey, we're bringing this pile of people in, step aside. But luckily, the new owners, or at least the new occupants, said, yeah, okay, we're willing to do that. The judge said no media. We'll see if that plays out yet because there will be an application made, I think. We'll definitely be there in the street to the degree they'll allow us, just like I was there for the Karen Reed jury view. But inside is the key. And, you know, the more testimony that came in, because I saw those pictures and I'm thinking, well, maybe the judge can kind of orient himself. The more testimony that came in from Noonan and then from Houston, I'm like, I want to see that space. I want to get a sense. And the hearing part you mentioned is very interesting. The attorneys will be allowed to, just as they would for the jury, point out certain things. Here's the doorway. Here's where the testimony says she moved from point A to point B. I don't know that they can say, hey, somebody go downstairs and you know, see if you can hear me. Yeah, that's not going to happen. But maybe there's some way to kind of judge ambient sound from the distance.
I would. I'd be listening. I'd be listening because I really want to know. I mean, for instance, in our house, if someone's in the basement and then someone else is 2 floors up, it's not a big house, but it does go up and down. I can tell you if they're all the way in the basement, I cannot at all hear what they say. But if they're on the first floor, I can hear every word. So I think you can tell without a specific test of go down there and say, but Michael, listen, creative lawyering, if you've been in the house and if you know it was or wasn't possible, if you knew that, wouldn't you maybe say to the judge, and judge, we would like to do a test where the defendant goes down here or I playing the role of says this to see. I would
at least ask. I think it would be met with denied only because you can't recreate the volume of the person who spoke. That's really the thing you can't recreate is that volume.
You're right.
Now,
you're right.
if you could if the court would allow you to drag Noonan's ass up there, and then he would, of course, then have control over the volume. So he could yell as loud as he wanted, even if in reality, when it happened, it was not as loud. So that's fraught with danger, but I would love to be able to do that. Here's something that I think is important. And I've talked about this being a cape, built like a cape, which means narrow hallway or stairway, and we've seen the pictures of that. And then you get up to the top, and it's break left for one bedroom, break right for the other. If you have a fancy cape, you might have a bathroom that separates those two. This one just has the bedrooms on each side. My point is these homes are very compartmentally built. It's not open concept, all right? So that means walls everywhere, partitions everywhere. And what does that do? Stops sound. It stops the sound. So very different from somebody who's yelling in the basement that's got 6 openings to the main floor, which is then one giant room.
Yeah.
No, this is totally compartmentalized. So what's being heard, I believe, because I believe him overall more than anybody else at this point, Houston heard what he heard, which was Kelsey. That's it. That's all he heard. And Justin didn't hear shit when he was down in the basement, except the gunshots.
And I didn't find Justin credible. So I would agree with that. And I hate to do this, Michael, because you're my favorite ever, but I do need
you gotta go.
I do.
It's already late. Oh my gosh. No, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to keep you so late. I apologize.
No. I love doing this. You can always keep me. It just happens tonight. I'm not able to, but I love that you're in the courtroom because you bring it to the viewers in a way that people can't if they're not there.
Yeah, it's that's what we try to do, and hopefully it's helpful. Okay, so get out of here. Still going to count on you tomorrow. Is that right?
Yeah. Oh, I can't wait.
Join. So, all right. Well, have a great evening. Thank you so much. Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank everybody for watching.
Okay, so I'm not going anywhere. I got one more thing I want to show you, just because it was so annoying. Let me see if I can cue this up, and then I'll get out of your way here. This was, anybody raise your hand if you enjoyed Michel. Did you enjoy Michel? I'm not even sure why they brought her on. I mean, unless they just wanted everybody to leave the day with a bad taste in their mouths. I don't get it. But they did. So let me see if I can cue this up for you here. Michel Mitchell, one of the friends of the alien, one of the people at Hunter's house. Hunter, I thought it was a bar. What's everybody going to Hunter's for? No, it's somebody's name. He's like Cher. He has one name, Hunter. So he's there. Courtney, the sister, is there. Michel is there. Somebody else who has not been a real player but was there. I can't remember her name either, but it was another person that was there at the house. And to me, this was it almost played against the prosecution's case. It made it sound like here these folks are plotting. They're plotting away to how they're going to take down Kelsey Fitzsimmons and get the alien his little baby. I don't know what the point of that was, but she had to be cross-examined. And that, to me, was the more interesting part of the process. Let's listen to just a touch of the cross-examination, which didn't last very long.
The Lawrence Courthouse to file a restraining order 209A and also get temporary custody of the child.
Okay. And at any point, did you see the defendant in the area of Hunter's house?
Yes.
And
Can you tell us
this
about that?
is, let me
Yes,
stop this for just a
eyewitness.
second. This is the very last question from direct, and then we'll hear Bradle's cross.
To drive by Hunter's house.
Thank you. I have nothing else.
Yeah, basically, she saw Kelsey Fitzsimmons drive by. So is that some sort of gotcha that Kelsey is stalking the Hunter house?
Good afternoon.
Check out the demeanor.
You said that you spoke with Kelsey on 6/30/25,
That is correct.
and she told you that she was driving around. She said that she was meeting Justin, right?
No, she was not named Justin.
Did you say needing Justin?
I thought you said meeting.
I did. Wasn't she going to meet Justin?
That was what I understood from Justin, but she didn't tell me that on the phone.
Okay, she said that she needed Justin.
Meeting or needing? You
Who's
need to
on
clarify that
first?
for me.
I think I said needed. She said she needed Justin.
Needed Justin, that is correct.
Okay, so just let's put that over here. And she had also told you that day that she was meeting Justin, right?
Yes, thank you for clarifying.
So she couldn't meet with you because she was meeting Justin, right?
That is what she said.
And you said there was some sort of gathering at Hunter's house,
Yes,
and that was a social gathering with swimming and drinking, right?
that is incorrect.
Was there swimming?
No, Mr. Bradle.
Was there drinking?
Also no.
And it was you, Katrina, and Justin and his sister and Hunter, right?
Correct.
Now, you said that you saw her drive by the house,
Yes,
and so it's fair to say that she would have been able to recognize some or all of the vehicles, right?
yes,
And going by the house is a route that would take her to the North Andover Common, right?
yes, it's near there, correct.
Nothing further.
Yeah. And I don't think that Michelle knew the importance of that last question, which was basically saying it was no big deal that she drove by because that's on the way where she was going to meet Justin had he not lied about saying he was going to meet her there. Anyway, I just don't know why this witness took the stand. No idea. I mentioned earlier, I think I posted it on X that Courtney was in the gallery today because she's already testified, so no longer covered by the sequestration. And we thought she looked intense on the stand. Oh my gosh, she looked even more intense just watching. I mean, she had her hair just like pulled straight back and just scrunched up in a giant ball. Just so intense, just like I thought she might explode right on the spot. But I guess that's her personality. Okay, so Kelsey lived on a busy street. I definitely got that impression. I've not been there. I will be there Thursday morning. A tiny driveway, playground next to the yard. Okay. Is that where she parked? Is that what you're suggesting? Anyway, I think the most interesting explanation was that because Justin, the alien, was playing kind of hide and seek, that she was not going to help him know when she wasn't or was not home. So I think that's the interpretation. Okay. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. And the Curious Law Tuber, thank you, Michael. Boots on the ground. Also Scott McGinnis. Yes, he is. And I got a slice from the guy today, and it was really pretty good. You know the rules, one bite. And it had no flop, but and Scott said this before I had a chance to eat mine. And good thing I love cold pizza because had the sauce had an interesting sweetness to it. I didn't dislike it. I didn't love it. It was just different. But the crust was great. The crust is the key to me. And it was very good. And, you always find that, the hungrier you are, the better the pizza is when you finally do get it. Okay, let me take a look. A couple more questions here before I leave you alone. Yeah, this is definitely a big question. Tushy61, shouldn't they have retrieved all the guns before they let her upstairs to pack a bag? Yeah, I mean, that's definitely been a criticism. And I'm just torn between, well, was that just incompetence or was it an accommodation because she's one of them, even in this weird context? I don't know. Obviously, it would have changed the whole scenario if they had done that, right? Okay, moving on. Let's see what else we got here. Hold on. Did I do this one already? I think I did. Oh yeah, this was the girl. This was the good answer. At least explains what we're talking about here, and that is it's kind of a tit for tat in terms of making it difficult for one significant other to do that. Trust but verify. If they went there to see if she had drugs, wouldn't they check the house? Yeah. Again, it was handled so poorly, and there were 3 cops there, and one more on the way. We learned that Core showed up really at the time of the shooting, so he was almost a non-factor. He didn't really bring a whole lot to the mix. The thing he did point out, which I found unbelievable, we talked about this at lunch, and that was that this guy wasn't even interviewed. Core arrived on the scene, so he was there. He went there to render aid to Kelsey. The shots went off as he was getting there. Lieutenant Daniel said, shots fired, shots fired. Screaming's coming out of the house. It's Lauren Page, for the most part, mom who's downstairs with the baby. And so he isn't talked to for 30 days. There's no statement from him for 30 days. And we also learned from Noonan, no statement from him till the 3rd. This happens on the 30th. So 3 days, 4 days, 3 days, no statement. What kind of investigation with an officer involved shooting goes so lax? They should have a statement, everybody in the perimeter that day. You don't leave till we get a statement from you. They didn't do it. Incompetence, accommodation to Noonan, getting their story straight. Who knows? It's just not the way it should be done. And I don't know if there's anybody out there that would think otherwise. Oh, that's good police practice, I'll tell you that. Okay, here we have Auntie BB. Is there a possibility? Yes, I always say yes, everything's possible. Is there a possibility she lied about the pew-pews because she didn't want to get into trouble with them not being locked up? That's a possible reason. She's thinking Justin told someone and they were there for that. I think it was a collateral issue. I don't think it was that was let's set her up, go there, and then, hey, the guns are available and there's a child in the house. He's way beyond that. He's already gotten the restraining order to snatch the kid. Why need that? I mean, that evidence, I guess, in theory, would pay off down the road, but he's already got what he wanted. We think he wanted the child. We're not sure if he just didn't want her to have the child, which is very different than wanting the child. Okay, let me see. I'm scrolling. Did I see somebody say hi, Linda? Was she in the chat? I think she's on the road, but could be. I don't know. Could be. Weapons. A lot of questions about those weapons. I'm telling you, the weapons locked in the basement. It's going to have to be explained. There's no doubt about it. And no doubt the court can order therapy in any of these child custody visitation issues, and they do a lot because if there's a couple fighting over the kids, mental health is important. Whether it's an addiction, whether it's behavioral issues beyond drugs, whatever, they want it to be addressed. Do you think he was stalking Kelsey, Justin? And that's why she kept the car elsewhere. I guess that's a possible reason. It's all related to that. I'm not going to help him find me if he's not going to be, available to me when he says he should be. Because remember, when she returned to the home, it's after he stood her up for 3 hours. Yep. Okay. I think we got all of those. All right, then. So tomorrow, the plan is I'll pop on about 8:30. I did it at 8:45 today, just to give a setup for where we're going, what was going to happen, see what I've learned overnight or in the morning that might change the plan for the day. But when I got up to the courtroom, and I will share this again without naming names, the area I was sitting in, there was no seat there, but there were some spaces with like books and baggage like saving seats. And I said, what the hell is going on here? There's no saving seats. This is not 6th grade. But what the hell? Well, somebody was saving a seat for another person. I just said, okay, I'm here right now, and have a nice day. And then I went and found another seat and found some lovely folks to talk to that we're going to have on the show. Do you read Mullen Law? You read Mullen Law? She's very good. And I think she was on last night. It was with I was getting them all confused. I know Mark Betterow was on as well. Mazza Media. Anyway, she was very interesting. She's from the area, been following these cases. We got engrossed in a conversation during one of the breaks. Definitely going to have her on so we can talk about her take on, what's happening in her own backyard. It's where she practices. It's very interesting insight. Okay, let's see. So my point was, I'm going to come on at 8:30 tomorrow, do the quick tee up, go on in, and you can look at the yellow stripe on the ground while the feed is waiting to go live. I want to know if he's been made to go for testing yet, or is that they're going to wait until nothing shows up? Wait until nothing shows up. Oh, I see what you're saying, that if he has anything in his system, we're talking about Justin the alien and his potential habits. We don't know. Waiting till it clears and then go take a test. I don't think he will voluntarily take a test. He is suspended from the North Andover fire. We have to imagine it's because of the questions regarding his substance use, whatever he was smoking. He's smoking something, so it's a substance. Whether it was illegal or not, we don't know. But maybe the employer wants to know, and maybe they have their own protocol for testing. That's a different issue. On the custody side, there has been a request by Julie Hess in her request and supported by the affidavit by Kelsey Fitzsimmons, snorting Adderall and all these other things. Apparently they have a friend that can get what you need. That testing has not even been addressed and won't be now until, because it was moved from April 2nd, won't be now until well after the April 14th. I shouldn't say well after, at some point after the April 14th protective order is going to be addressed. So, okay. Yeah. And this, I know, I agree. In Massachusetts, firefighters can't smoke weed and cigarettes on or off duty. Yeah. And good for them. I'm glad that's a rule anybody should be able to live with if they're a firefighter. I just don't get it. So yeah, to that point, doesn't matter what he's smoking, but for the family court, it does matter. Okay. So he may be unemployed as well, which could also be an issue for the family court, right? All of these things, and I've asked Julie Hess about these a few different times. Let me take one last look before I bug out for the day to see if she got to me with answers to my last. I told her, I said, now you're going to regret this. You answered a couple of questions for me. I know you couldn't come on the show. You were busy doing some other stuff. But the fact that you answered these questions means I will continue to ask you questions until you say, please stop. Okay. Looks like she hasn't gotten back to me. that may be telling me something. But I will share tomorrow what she shares on the latest update on the questions. And one of them is that video of Justin the alien smoking something enough to affect his position on support and visitation, or do you need more? Do you need some confirmation of what it was he was smoking? So we'll see. I fully expect that they need more, but it certainly raises some ugly questions if you're in a custody or visitation battle, as he is. All right, thanks for joining again all day with our in and outs and the lunchtime. Like the lunchtime gathering, it lets me kind of focus on some of my notes. We have a lot of questions that we hopefully have answered for you. I will post those as separate standalones because they kind of become a recap of what's been going on in court. So as we head toward the verdict in this case, which we expect Thursday sometime, it's kind of nice to go back through and see what the issues were that were covered in court and that people wondered about. So, all right, then. Again, thanks, Linda Kenny Baden. Back tomorrow at some point. Judge Ashley Willcott back tomorrow night for the 6 o'clock. And I'm pretty sure Linda will be back then. For those who have said, "Where's Linda? We love Linda. We miss Linda." Okay, calm down. She'll be around tomorrow night. Okay. In the meantime, my
now.